So the dog-tooth cat snake, or scientific name Boiga Cynodon, this boiga holds the record for what is probably the longest out of the entire genus, with adults measuring 9 feet, even some may even top that. They are a very big boiga. Now, a couple other records that this animal holds is probably what is the largest natural range, and also how many different color morphs and color phases this animal comes in. So it's actually pretty unique among the boiga genus. So Cynodon can range all the way up to in Bangladesh and India in the north, all the way down to Indonesia in the south, and all countries in between, even as far reaching as the Philippines. So the natural form, or wild type as we say, is typically a banded animal. The base colors can range from tan or gray, sometimes vivid yellows. In the Philippines, they even exhibit some green colors, hypomelanistic, patternless animals, and even in Malaysia and southern Thailand, there is a hypermelanistic form. Now, dog-tooth cat snakes are very slight in build, meaning that they don't weigh very much. So even though they're a very long snake, they don't have a lot of bulk. They are highly arboreal, and they are very well suited to get up into the treetops. They are feeding almost exclusively on birds, and they will go into bird nests and consume entire eggs. They are a little bit more of a specialty feeder than other boiga. So Cynodon are arboreal, so I recommend tall arboreal caging. You can put branches in there, you can put even synthetic bird nests in there. When you feed, you can put your frozen thawed birds into the nest if you want. You can put quail or chicken eggs in those nests depending on the size of your animal. Usually they will take either of those prey items. Now, Boiga Cynodon, because they're slight in build, they can dehydrate rather easily, especially during shipping, whether it's domestic or international shipping, it doesn't matter. Animals tend to get dehydrated regardless. So, misting, spraying, I highly recommend it, especially for Cynodon. You can do this automated, you can do it manually. And for those of you that have never been to the tropics, it is very common to have it rain in the late afternoon, the early evening, or even during the night. So if you're gonna do the automated way, program your misters to go off in the evening time. If you do it manually, maybe before you go to bed, or if you're a night owl or whatever, spray into the evening and then lights out, that's it, call it a day. Those snakes are nocturnal, they're gonna be cruising around. Anything that promotes activity, especially for an animal in captivity, is going to be beneficial. And anything that promotes hydration through drinking, spraying, fresh water, all that sort of thing, it's just going to be an all-around win-win for the animals. So for temperatures, I just recommend standard tropical colubrid temps, maybe a warm spot of about 85, maybe 86, but make sure that your cage has a very much lower ambient so the animal can choose for itself. If you force the animal to be hot, it's probably going to be uncomfortable. Just provide a gradient, let the animals choose to sit or get away from the heat and cool off. They know what's best for themselves. So because boiga are nocturnal, they're really only active during the night. During the daytime, especially in the wild, they're going to be hunkered down in the shade somewhere. So providing lighting is a choice for you guys to make. Personally, I don't feel like it's beneficial for a nocturnal snake because they're not out basking in the light. I'm not saying it doesn't have health benefits, but I just have never used it myself, and I've had a lot of experience keeping Boiga Cynodon, so I will leave that decision up to you guys. Now for meals, we already covered it. Bird, prey, eggs, that sort of thing. Anything avian is usually what they're going to be going after. But the difference is that even though they're like a very long snake, they don't do well with gigantic meals. And I try to feed them smaller meals, even multiples. If it's a really big Cynodon, I'll give it like multiple quail or multiple chicks per feeding, but I don't like to give them some gigantic meal because they're just not built for it. They can handle it in most cases, but I just feel the animals are more comfortable with smaller meals. Kind of like us, you guys, when we gorge at some buffet, we feel super uncomfortable. It feels horrible sometimes. We just overeat. And when we eat smaller meals, they just tend to digest better. And so I look at the snakes, I look at their build, and I kind of make the decision for them, as we all must with our captives. So smaller meals, multiples if you need to. So we've bred this species multiple times. If you have experience breeding boiga, this species is no different than any of the others. The eggs are the same, the breeding is the same. There are issues with cannibalism in some species of Boiga, maybe all species. I've only experienced it in a couple. I have not experienced it with Cynodon, although that doesn't mean that it would never happen. So when I do my cycling, I like to do food cycling. That's my primary method in the very beginning. So I will withhold food for the females, and I will kind of like winter them in a way. I won't manipulate the temperatures that much, maybe a little bit of a more extreme nighttime drop, but the daytime they're going to get heat. And then when I want to do the pairings, when I want to get some things going, I will start to increase the frequency of the meals and the size of the meals for the females. The males doesn't really matter, they can stay lean and mean, but the females need to sort of get that extra stimulus to start building, to hopefully try to start developing follicles. Now, because there is cannibalism known among Boiga, if you pair them when the female especially is not receptive, you may risk losing one of those animals to cannibalism. So what I like to do is I like to palpate for follicles. If I feel follicles, then I know that that female is ready to breed, and usually I'm not going to have any issues. So that is kind of how I do it in a nutshell. If you don't know how to palpate, I've done a couple videos on it. It's really something that needs to be taught in person. It's hard to do kind of like explain it and teach it through video, but I also use a couple of different methods to kind of figure out what's going on with my animals. They will tell you what's going on with them just by the way they act, where they sit. Any behavior that's a little bit off usually means something, so just pay attention to your animals. They're probably trying to tell you something, or at least letting you know that there is something happening, some changes going on. Now, clutch sizes for me have been around maybe 8 average, depending on the size of the female. There can be less, there can be more. The eggs I usually will incubate at around 80 degrees. They're going to take about 115 to 120 days to hatch. If you incubate them a little bit warmer, then it's going to shorten the incubation period. They will hatch sooner, maybe a week or two sooner if you push it. If you incubate cooler, normally the incubation period is going to last a little bit longer. I know a lot of people in today's day and age are very impatient, but for me, luckily I'm in control of my feelings and my emotions, and I just like to cook them really low temperature. I'm very patient. I feel like the animals come out bigger, better, stronger. They have more time, and on their own time, they're absorbing the yolk and developing better. I've noticed that babies also sometimes tend to feed better being incubated at lower temperatures, and you also lessen the risk of kinking. When you incubate eggs a little bit too high, sometimes it ends up with kinked animals, so I just go low temperatures all the way through, so like 80 is good for me. So getting babies established for Boiga Cynodon, I would put them a little bit on the more difficult list, only because of their feeding preferences. So they eat birds. If you're raising your own button quail like we do, we can offer live day-old button quail to babies, and it's almost always a guarantee winner, not only with Cynodon, but other Boiga and other colubrids. It's just been a game changer. I know that most people probably are not willing to raise quail, but if you do, like I said, it's a real game changer. If you get an animal that refuses to feed, you may have to assist feed. So maybe like mouse tail segments, wet them down, put them up to the snake's mouth. And because Boiga are rear fang, chewing is natural for them. That's how they deploy their rear fang. So sometimes if you can kind of get them started, sort of put it in their mouth and they get a little bit angry, they start chewing and they'll actually kind of like chew it down. Do that a few times, and then if you can get them to start feeding voluntarily, you're good to go. If you have an animal that is extremely difficult, just refusing anything, Cynodon, although they're longer than most other Boiga at hatching, they are very fragile, and they do not do good with force feeding. So it's a very delicate process. You have to try a lot of different things, but like I said, live day-old button quail, that's the winner. So Boiga Cynodon, one of the most impressive species in the genus, one of my favorites. Now, we are not trying to dominate the Cynodon market at all, but living out here in Southeast Asia, it really puts me at an advantage, and I'm able to put my hands on some really amazing animals. So at the time of this video, we currently have Philippine Bohol locality natural type. We have Philippine locality patternless or hypos, whatever you want to call them. We have some normal Malaysian locality natural form. We have some really nice hypermelanistic Malaysia locality. We also have some wild-caught leucistics from Indonesia. Now these are very impressive. We currently have either 2.2 or 1.3. And then last but not least, a new addition, a T-positive albino or a hypomelanistic, if you will, also wild-caught from Indonesia. So our breeding with Cynodon is successful, it's ongoing, and it's going to be really interesting, especially if we can make some things happen with those morph animals. Now, our facility in Malaysia is a lot bigger than what we had to work with in the USA. So if more morph animals happen to come my way, I'm sure we can make space for them in that big facility, and we will just let the universe kind of decide where that project goes. So that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you in the next one. Take care.